I've also gotten plans for a homemade fuel cell that you can build that converts water into hydrogen gas that you can use to run your car.
Grant's hydrogen fuel cell is all about electrolysis. When you apply a voltage to electrodes in water, the H2O molecules split into hydrogen and oxygen. This internet patent can allegedly generate so much hydrogen that you can run a car.
Normally, gasoline enters the combustion chamber where it is ignited to produce power. However, gasoline does not burn efficiently, so unburned fuel and pollutants exit through the exhaust. But oxyhydrogen fuel burns at nearly 100% efficiency. So when it is mixed with your car's fuel, it reduces emissions and fuel consumption. Combustion efficiency is increased, horsepower is increased, and carbon deposits are cleaned away. This helps your car's engine to run cleaner. The benefits of using Epic's oxyhydrogen fuel. Your gas consumption is reduced by 20% or more. CO2 emissions are also reduced by 20% or more.
Adam's going to build the electrolysis device as detailed in the internet plans.
That right there is the business end of the oil monopoly, man!
While Grant is concentrating on the power. It's the current through the electrodes that should cause hydrogen to be released.
This should be a square wave, and right now it's kind of a nasty sawtooth.
After an hour of fernickety fiddling, Adam's fuel cell is connected to Grant's power circuit, and everything's ready for a test.
Dude, I see bubbles. Check it out.
Yeah, it is bubbling.
It's working. Hydrogen is bursting forth. But will these tiny bubbles be enough?
Startling about a machine that can extract the hydrogen from water. What is highly unusual is that it should do so with ordinary tap water. The conventional method is called electrolysis. Meyer has turned that process on its head. Unlike electrolysis, his device doesn't use up large amounts of electric current, nor does it produce an enormous amount of waste heat. For 20 years, he has been refining a method to fracture water, which produces vast amounts of hydrogen on demand. This is not his latest apparatus. He was unwilling to let us point a camera at that. This is the simple device he used to convince a reluctant patent office that his revolutionary concept actually works. Alloy rods, acting as electrodes, are housed in a perspex container that's filled with water. Normal mains voltage is fed in through a transformer. But critically, there is virtually no current consumed, less than half an amp. The result is dramatic. Hydrogen pours off with the flick of a switch. Meyer claims the key is his electronics, which pulses electricity rapidly across the rods at up to 20,000 cycles per second. In a way that's not readily apparent, this process transforms the equation. Whereas in conventional electrolysis, 3 times as much energy is consumed as is produced in the form of hydrogen fuel, in Meyer's apparatus, the reverse is true. It appears to produce several 100% more energy than it consumes.
Stan has something that's characteristic of the people that sound like they've done something to tap zero-point energy. has high frequency, high voltage, and there's a combination of the two at which something occurs. With Chernetsky in Russia, it was what he called a self-sustaining discharge. The tube would run by itself. When Stan gets this effect, the amount of hydrogen and oxygen that are emitted off these two electrodes is a step function. It almost boils the water. If I did this with standard electrochemicals, I need current, and the water should rise a degree every couple of seconds. With Stan's, it'll run for a half hour, and the water temperature hasn't changed. Something's different.
Meyer demonstrates this repeatedly without any difficulty, and yet on the face of it, it represents an extraordinary revolution. His measurements over the years suggest 1,700% greater efficiency than conventional electrolysis. And if he's to be believed, he's getting much better results from his latest, still secret invention.
Well, I first got involved with Stan Meyer when I went over there with a couple of colleagues to look at his water-splitting device. And so we arrived at Stanley Mayer. He had a demonstration cell. We filled it with tap water. In fact, I did that myself. And he switched it on, and almost instantly there were 3 jaws dropped because of the rate at which the gas poured off. It was quite spectacular.
Whatever energy source Stan Meyer had tapped, it was not explicable by the electric power that was going into it. So something was powering it outside of conventional wisdom.
There is no question that the gas coming off in such abundance is hydrogen. Meyer ignites it to produce a high-temperature flame able to cut through metal.
Stanley Mayer has faced a lot of difficulties. He's 3 times tried to launch the device and produce press conferences, had the technical press round, but he's been almost universally slated. In the early days, very much so, they just ridiculed the whole idea. He's getting a little more notice now because some scientists are getting interested. But by and large, science is very intolerant, particularly modern science.
As with Tesla, Griggs and others, Meyer's claims are so far outside the received scientific wisdom that they've been ignored by the majority of the scientific establishment. But then, Meyer has ignored them too. He has poured his energies over the last 10 years into establishing recognition for his claims by getting international patents.
In the processing, there was a great deal of difficulty in trying to process the legal paperwork in such a way as to allow the patent office to fully understand what was actually occurring. In one instant, we brought the water fuel cell to Washington, D.C., and of course I had tweaked it in such a way to produce an enormous amount of hydrogen and oxygen gas, and the patent examiner said, no, it will not work based on the electrolysis process. And when we turned it on and produced an enormous amount of hydrogen and gas, the examiner finally realized that we were doing exactly that, and went out in the hallway and started screaming and hollering to everybody on the floor, put out all your cigarettes, hydrogen's in the building. So we started laughing and said, well, we certainly convinced everybody in the patent office that we can do what we said we can do.
Even so, the US Patent Office dragged their feet for 3 years before granting patents on the hydrogen-producing device. Since then, against massive resistance, he's managed to get patents established throughout Europe and Japan. But the hydrogen machine was only the first step towards Meyer's ultimate dream. If he gets it right, this application of his technology would change the 21st century in the same way that the Wright brothers and Carl Benz transformed the 20th. He is currently modifying a beach buggy to run on nothing but water. It doesn't have a petrol tank or even a hydrogen container. It has just a tank of water. He's invented a device called a water splitter to replace the spark plug. As the water is injected into the engine, Meyer claims it's fractured into hydrogen and oxygen and then burned as fuel. Meyer is working on a kit to modify any engine. He hopes to demonstrate it on this car within 12 months.
And of course, the blessing to the use of the water as a fuel source, that on combustion, the byproduct is water mist. So we're even solving the environmental pollution problem at the same time.
Television ever broadcast.
They're about to see if they can run a car on flammable hydrogen gas produced by electrolysis.
This is the instructions on the patent, that you bolt the output of the fuel cell right to the throat of your carburetor.
There'll be no gasoline, just hydrogen fed straight into the carburetor. But will the car even start?
Come on! All right. My God, it doesn't work. I can't believe it doesn't work. I found it on the internet, man.
Come here and go on the generator in the car.
Already did.
Okay. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's running off of natural water. What's amazing is this? Fantastic.
Test whether a car could even run on hydrogen in the first place, the boys are going to hose some directly into the carburetor.
Ready?
Yeah,
okay, here we go. Okay. That's the coolest thing ever. I guess you could, if you had a lot of hydrogen, run your engine completely without any other modifications.
Let's do it again.
You know there's going to be trouble when it's all going so well.
Whoops. Okay, that's enough of that test.
With a rather nasty backfire, it's time to back out.
I think it's best if we just let it go.